We don't show prep. So, so he had no idea.
I just barely make it in.
I'm sure you can tell, but we don't show.
I mean, let's put the cards down on the table here.
Miami Hurricanes, yeah. You know the name already. It's Mercy. Ha ha. It's a 6-Rig Kane show. Can't forget the name though. Got Jazz, Blue, Vision, DJ, break the game code. Ain't no changing them, ain't no breaking them. Real put alive from the Hard Rock Stadium. Ball 14 for the orange and green. We see the 6-Rig champs. It's more than a dream. This is life on the field. Beyond 100 yards, a hurricane that's never still put a damage to your squad. The 6-Rig Kane show. The 6-Rig Kane show. The 6 Rings Kane show. You know.
What's wrong with us? Seriously.
What's wrong with us? We're Miami Hurricanes fans.
Welcome to the 6 Rings Kane Show, a show dedicated to Miami Hurricane sports, featuring the legendary Larry Bluestein, Jazz Santana, Vish, and Danny Gillette. Let's go Canes.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the 6 Rings Kane Show here on Monday, November 20th. Obviously, you'll notice Jazz Santana not here. He had a prior commitment, so DJ Blue, and I'll be holding it down. How's it going, fellas?
Good.
Can't complain.
Yeah, there's nothing to complain about. You know what? If you did, this whole season would be one big complaint. So
I was about to say, I can think of a few things to complain about, but we'll try to at least be a little bit
optimistic.
Or reflective versus shouty and just
I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, everything the everything sucks show gets boring after a while, so we'll try to be a little bit more reflective on a season that is it's had its ups and downs, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And so but I guess as everyone's aware, the Canes fell to Louisville on Saturday 38-31. As everyone expected, Tyler Van Dyke, probably the best player on the field for the Hurricanes.
That's right.
Fletcher was awesome as well. And then it was the offense trying to keep the team in the game while the defense repeatedly blew it. So it's always something. But the Canes, again, I think we kind of lose sight of it because of name brand. This was a top 10 team that came into Miami and went right down to literally the last play again, but this time the Canes came up short. It's been one of those seasons. So I guess let's just start with the topic we seem to start every show with, which is the quarterback play. Start with you, Blue. What did you quite the bounce back performance? Really out of necessity because Emery got injured or he wouldn't have even been playing. But what did you think of Tyler Van Dyke? Kind of the old Tyler Van Dyke showed up.
Definitely. I think he raised the bar back where it was, and and in the post-game press conference, he said the same thing. He said he felt good. He saw things. I think he kind of has been, from a physical standpoint, hurting as well. I'm not going to use that as an excuse throughout the year. He did take some hits early on in the year, but I thought he rose to the occasion. I kept yelling out, "Hey, wait a minute. They got more than 5 plays." And they kind of used a lot of different things. Xavier Restrepo, his favorite guy, was really a favorite guy. 8 catches, 190 yards, touchdown. I was, you know what? It really, when you look at it, the two teams in the ACC title game, Miami lost by a combined 14 points, 2 touchdowns. So, I think so many good things are ahead between the portal, the recruiting, the off season. They're going to get a bowl game. Who it may be, we don't know yet. There's all these projections, but we'll have to wait and see. But it'll extend our show and things to talk about another couple of weeks anyway. And And then they come back, and we'll see what happens. The National Signing Day, first National Signing Day, is about a month from now. We'll see who comes in early, and then after that, we'll slowly build out the roster to springtime, when I think that we're going to have a different look again. But I think it's going to be a more positive look than, this year we were just, I think, happy to just have anybody new, But this time around, I think it's going to be different. Now you have some new faces, but the coaching really rallied. I mean, you look at guys like Mark Fletcher. Again, Miami had 6 starting freshmen. 6. That's a lot. But that's a good thing because they all perform well. As Vish, as you said, Mark Fletcher looks like a 3-year player already. I mean, and the most humble guy in the world. You get him and he was talking and he would never take credit for anything, thanking Coach Harris for everything he's believed in him and Coach Dawson. And I'll tell you, when you look at guys like that and Mawanoa at offensive tackle or wherever he's going to play, I think he's going to be really, really good. And then you look at Reuben Payne, who, 3 and gone, 3 in the first round draft pick, and Brown in the secondary. It's just, the only thing is, it's not a criticism, Bish. It's just something of an observation. You would have thought that the tight end play for Louisville would have rubbed off on Miami.
Oh my God.
14 catches between.
It was, they were not covered. I mean, they were just open on every play. It was ridiculous. DJ must have been so conflicted seeing such a tight end, but that's against us.
Somebody made a great point, DJ. Miami never practiced against that. They don't, so they weren't ready.
No, I mean, and there is something to that, just as a tight end, tight end being a safety valve for the quarterbacks. And, I think, for Louisville, I remember watching Jack Plummer, their quarterback, over at Purdue. It seems like he's been in college football forever. But, I thought, I got to give credit to him. I thought he played pretty well. And,
very well.
This Louisville squad is no joke. They are a very good football team, and they have a lot of playmakers. And although we lost, I feel as though we put forth a good showing, particularly as you guys mentioned earlier, Tyler Van Dyke. I mean, he didn't have any interceptions. He did have the 1 touchdown, and only the 1 touchdown, but I thought it was a good way to get him back on track in terms of mental outlook and mental focus. And, I'm not really going to sit here and complain about all the things we should or shouldn't have done, because it does get exhausting, but, I think there were a lot of positives. And, to have a type of game like this at the end of the season, against a very good football team, it gives you something to build off in the spring with hopefully more continuity than last spring.
Yep. And then, definitely DJ. Good point, especially on the continuity. This has been a perpetual cycle of turnover. I want to talk about the coaching in a second, but just a couple of things in the chat. Shout out to Mr. Overdose, one of our regulars, and Ralph, thanks, appreciate it. And then, talking about some of the recruiting, losing some offensive talents locally. The offense has got to change. I do want to talk about that a little bit later, maybe in the middle part of the show after we get through talking about Louisville, because we do seem to perpetually cycle through coordinators. And so I don't know that that's necessarily the best idea to just keep changing coordinators every year. But one of the things, this was a game where the offense stepped up and the defense did not, and it was, we lost Blue. But generally when that happens, he comes back in. There's a Lawrence Bluestein in the chat, which I don't think that's the
or related to Blue.
I'm here.
Yeah,
Blue, is this Lawrence Bluestein a familiar of yours, or is it?
Yeah.
Okay, it is.
That's
is this
me.
Someone you know, or is this?
No, that's me.
You typed in the chat. What's up, guys? Lots of changes ahead.
No, I didn't type that. Somebody pirated me.
Okay, so someone is pirating Blue. What's the same exact name? That's why I was like, it's not just something Bluestein, it's Lawrence. So I was kind of like,
that ain't me.
yeah, I was about to say, you can just unmute, talk to us. You don't have to go in the chat to get your points in. But yeah, I do think one of the issues I had as TBD, as Blue said, TBD got banged up against North Carolina. I think it's pretty obvious. He missed the next game. He wasn't the same after that. And I think as the narrative developed over time that, oh, he had been bad since like the Temple game, that wasn't accurate. If you go back and watch the throws he was making in that North Carolina game, we didn't see throws like that again until last weekend. And I think the injury got to him a little bit, but also one of the things I was struggling with and it showed up this weekend was he was terrible. Don't get me wrong. And I think he deserved to get benched. He did not deserve to play the Florida State game. But putting everything on him and saying this is why we're losing, and we knew we had a game like this in us because North Carolina was very similar to this. The offense kept scoring, the defense couldn't stop anything, and that's 2 of the 5 losses. And then it's Jazz playing a choke on Blue. I don't know about that. I don't think Jazz is available to do that right now because if he can get in the chat, I'm going to be mad at for not getting in the stream. Yeah. But I feel like with this team, and Blue, you talked about this, I think probably before, I think it was in the backstage before we started, but like they're getting closer. They're not there yet. So right now they're in the find a way to lose phase of the rebuild. And if it wasn't that, like when they got the pass interference and it was down to the 4-yard line, I turned to my sister with Sanders and I was like, one of 3 things is going to happen. Either we're not going to score, which turned out to be what happened, or we're scoring the extra point's going to get blocked. Or they're just going to go down and kick a winning field goal on the last play of the game. We're going to lose anyway. Like it was just like, it's one of those things where, it's one of those years where by and large, when it got down to the end of games, things go wrong. And look, the offense has to be able to score from the 4-yard line, but to me, it was almost the opposite of the North Carolina State game, where the offense is the only reason we're in the game because they kept scoring, they kept up with Louisville, and the defense just kept giving up points. Keep in mind, the defense got lucky. Louisville missed like a 20-yard field goal in the second quarter too because there should have been more points on them, right? But that doesn't mean the offense first and goal in the 4, you got to score a touchdown. And the reason I say it's almost the opposite of the North Carolina State game is that game, the defense is the only reason you're in that game. But they also cannot give up a 97-yard touchdown drive. They cannot do that at that stage. And this is the offense, you got to get 4 more yards. And it feels like it's been something with this team. That's why I thought it was a little simplistic to say, oh, if we had a better quarterback, everything would be fine. No, like there's still growth that needs to happen here. And you kind of saw that on Saturday. You saw that against North Carolina. Hell, against Georgia Tech, everyone rightfully is focused on how do you not kneel the ball. You know what went under the radar? You give a touchdown on 75 yards in 2 plays.
Yeah.
Play some defense, and the game is over anyway. We all laugh about this. Instead, you let them throw a touchdown 2 passes. Like
was that
from the other end of the field.
Collided?
No, that was that was this weekend where they ran. I'm talking about the Georgia Tech game. The Georgia Tech game, like that's a 3rd loss where look, Tyler Van Dyke was terrible in that game. And we should have nailed it, and then it's a win. But also, the defense did not have to give up a touchdown in 2 plays, right? And so, to me, it's been all these small things that have added up to losses. And the big thing has often been the quarterback play. But until we get better at the small things, you're going to keep losing games. Like, this is the mismanagement of the clock on that. Like, you cannot waste a timeout on offense there. Mm-hmm. And that came back to the timeout and the 2 personal fouls really hurt on that last drive. You got to get an extra 30 yards with 40 seconds less than you should have had. And that's a killer. And those are the types of things that have got to get cleaned up. But I do think, to kind of put a positive spin and throw it around the horn again here. I think progress has been made. The team is clearly not there yet. That's why they're 6-5. But there's a lot. Last year it was, and this is where I think we can tie into some of what Ralph is talking about here. Last year was this whole thing has to change. It has to go. The defense is terrible. The offense is terrible. The players have quit. And this year it's more, all right, we need to be 5% better everywhere and maybe 20% at quarterback. And that's it. Where last year I feel like it was like, all right, we need to be 80% better across the board. Yeah. And so I think there's been a lot of progress. It's not actually really showing up on the record because it's one more win than last year at this time. But as Blue said, I think pre-show, in every single one of these games. And last year was not in most of these games, getting blown out on the regular. So I do think it's been a season of progress, even though it's not necessarily on the record. But I'll throw it to you, Blue, first to get your thoughts on that, and then over to DJ.
You mean on the season itself? Or?
Yep, yeah, just kind of overall, and then tie it into the Louisville game as able, but not necessarily have to.
Well, as the schedule got tougher, the game, and we said that early on when Miami, we were talking after the Texas A&M game, and we said, okay, well, you know what, off to a great start. Probably, I know DJ and I didn't think they'd win that game, but they did. And then the Georgia Tech game came, and then you're starting to doubt, what's going to happen again. And the road games, they played well, as you said, against North Carolina, but things started falling apart. Against NC State, they just missed every opportunity possible. They could have won that game going away, but they let NC, how close was it until the end? It was really close. And then Florida State game, I thought that from a character standpoint, that was one of their biggest games. They're playing the best team in the, in the ACC, top 4 overall on the road, with a freshman quarterback. And I thought they played well against Louisville. Sometimes you got to look on the other side of the ball and figure maybe that team is good enough that they're making you make mistakes. And that's what happened. And I think you said with Plummer, and he did a tremendous job. Kind of had some wheels. So he gave them that option. And the tight ends were huge. And when a former quarterback like Joey Blackwood, the kid from Bartram Trail, and now is a tight end for Louisville, may be in, when they hurt you, then puts everything into perspective. And that's what Mario Cristobal said in the post-game interview when someone asked him, their tight end play really hurt, really hurt Miami. And they did. They caught some really big balls, and, we'll see. You come back on Friday and you play as good as you can, win, lose, or draw. And still, as bad as things are, you can win 8 games this year, which won't sound terrible. But you could also go 6 and 7, which you don't want to, you kind of revert you back to Manny Diaz time. So, as far as that's concerned, I think we're so far ahead of where we were with any other regime that's been there for a while, because we have the talent, we have the coaching. Just as Vish said, next year we come out on the top of some of these games, and then all of a sudden we're 8-2, and then things don't look so bad. So, that's a game of football. You look at Arizona. They're a perfect example. Last year made all these mistakes and finished 2-9. Or 3-8 or whatever they did. Now this year they're 8-2, 9-2. So it can happen. Yeah, and especially the way that with Miami's recruiting, with Miami's portal, and Miami's coaching, I think that schedule's tough next year, but it's gonna be tough every year.
Yeah.
Because the ACC is getting really, really good. Whether anybody wants to say so or not, there's some really good teams in the ACC. So, and I just thought, at the beginning of the year when we went down, when we had that show and we picked what we thought.
You and TJ had it at 7, so
7 and 5,
right in there.
Yeah, but I thought it would be better than it was last year, and I think it's sometimes, and especially with when your leader on offense isn't consistent, you don't have a quarterback that you can say, okay, well at least we have him every game. That makes a big difference. But I thought defensively, Miami played very well. We learned a lot about our front 7. And I think that moving forward, I think the defense is really going to be the place to really look at in the offseason as they're going to probably lose 2 play. I think Kitchens goes for sure. Don't know about LT, but he may, because it's a commodity to be a defensive tackle. And we'll see with James Williams. Because James Williams, and I said this from 2 years ago, guys, should be in the box. No way should he be a safety. And you'll see at the next level, they're going to put him in that box. He'll be an outside linebacker. He just is not, he's not a safety. I don't care what anybody says. You can say what you want. He's just not. He hits. Special teams. Miami's got really good special teams. They kick, they punt. But yeah, a lot to be disappointed about, but there's a lot to be optimistic about.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head with it. It's a kind of a weird feeling because it felt like left some wins out there. Obviously, the Georgia Tech game. I mean, you're going to own that one forever. That one you're going to own forever. Like, that is inexcusable to not kneel the ball. But it's also inexcusable to fumble, even though he really was down. It's also excusable to give up a touchdown. And earlier, 75. They went the whole field in 2 plays and got a touchdown. I was like, play some defense too. Like, everything just like that one. That one's the one that's forever going to be, there was really no excuse for them. But even, 2 losses were ball on the 4-yard line, couldn't get it in there. North Carolina State and Louisville. I mean, those could easily be wins. So.
And you had 2 signature wins at the time, A&M, Clemson.
Yeah.
So, going into the season, if, we said, hey, we're going to beat A&M and Clemson, you'd say, okay, I'll take it.
Right.
So.
And I think Mr. Overdose is making some points about some of the kind of cumulative effects and kind of some of the way. I do want to talk about the coaching as well, because Ralph talked about that in a minute after we kind of finish this point on some things that probably need to improve on there. But Blue, to your point, then I'm going to throw this to DJ. First shout out to Dan Barry, friend of all of our shows, so gotta give him a shout out. But one of the things you touched on is the ACC is a lot better than people think it is. Like, everyone was like, "Oh, Duke," after they beat Clemson. Duke is also 6-5. Duke just got beat pretty handily by Virginia. They scored a garbage touchdown to lose by 3. Virginia, that was their first home win. I mean, but they played us down to the wire. They won at North Carolina. Like, this is probably, if not one of the worst teams in the conference. That's giving, teams that are going to the bowl games tough battles, and it's gotten deeper. And you know what? Flying out to California to play games is not going to be easy either. And we gotta, and that's what some of Mr. O was talking. Like, these little mistakes you make at the margins are the difference, and we're just not at that level of maturity as a program right now to not make those mistakes, and that's why these are. It's not going to take that much to turn some of these into wins. DJ, floor is yours. Lou and I have been doing some talking here.
Well, I think there are improvements to be had this year for sure. And one of the things that stuck out to me was the emergence of Mark Fletcher. I mean, obviously he played earlier in the season and he was able to get in some games, but he's really come on, late this year as a dependable running back. I believe he had over 120 yards on Saturday. So his growth and his ability to assert himself in a very deep running back room is something to look forward to. I thought the offensive line play for most of this year was extremely, extremely consistent and, a strength of this team. And, I definitely get what you're saying. It does feel like a weird season. I mean, we had obviously the big Texas A&M win, and then the Georgia Tech mishap, and the North Carolina loss, and yet we're still going to a bowl game, and we still get those extra practices before the bowl game, so that will help the growth of the team. And so while we're going to a bowl game and having those extra practices, it does feel like we've left a little bit out on the field. I mean, at the same time, this upcoming opponent, Boston College, they almost lost to Holy Cross, school out in Worcester, about 10 minutes from where I went to school. And then they took Florida State down to the wire the week after. So this is a very competitive ACC. I do think it's a lot better than people give it credit for, just due to the, competitive nature of the teams. I mean, you look at Virginia. I mean, their record was not great at all this year, and yet they played extremely tough and they played, disciplined. And, so I think the ACC is a lot better than, people give it credit for. And, I think, unfortunately, Miami found that out in some instances the hard way. So I don't really consider this too much of a lost season, but there is definitely room for improvement, and we're still going to a bowl game, which could be a big sell in recruiting in terms of, hey, you can help us get from this bowl game to the expanded playoff in 2024.
Yeah, and I think that you mentioned is a larger playoff field. We'll see it, and it's going to be a larger ACC too. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
everybody's
going to
getting
be
larger. All the
yeah, but it's going to be hard to make the ACC championship game with this unbalanced scheduling. Like we were the best team Louisville played this year in conference. And they end up with one loss. They got blown out by Pitt of all teams.
Yeah.
And they're going in, and there's going to be more of that. Like depending on how your schedule shakes out, there are going to be teams putting up gaudy conference records by playing, a majority of games against the bottom part of the conference when you have that many teams. So that's why it's important. Whoever's on the schedule, you just got to get wins because gone are the days of like, hey, if we go 5-3 in the Coastal, win some tiebreakers, that's not going to get it done anymore.
Nope.
So yeah, it's a new era, and you mentioned with the expanded playoffs too. You figure if you have a good win-loss record overall, and you're in the ACC championship game, there's a shot to get in there. Because they're going to look at power conference teams to fill those slots for the most part, except for the one automatic that goes to a G5 school. So this, or I guess we don't call them P5 anymore because of whatever's left of the Pac-12, but the P4. And so, the stakes are going to get raised here because, this season was kind of over after Georgia Tech from a championship tournament type of thing, right? It wasn't going to, you weren't going to come back from that and win out and then like make the playoffs. It just wasn't going to happen. But with the expanded set, those types of things, there'll be larger stakes, and we'll see how they respond. I guess the last thing I want to touch on before we will talk about the coaching. I know there's been some questions in the chat around that in terms of philosophy and all of that. I guess to lead into that, I'm going to throw this out there to Blue and DJ, but whoever wants can take it. Is there any realistic chance that like Mario in the offseason like studies how to manage a clock? Like, or we just no? I'm not even saying it sarcastically because I think a lot of the stuff we can talk about. In fact, we saw this development of Mark Fletcher, right? And one of the things Jazz and I have been talking about a lot, I think I said on the show, is he didn't have that second level vision. He would burst through the hole, and then he wouldn't make that last cut to turn, his 8-10-yard games into 20, 30, 50-yard. He did that this week. Like, he's improving his running style. His vision's getting better. You can see the head coach generally does not improve his clock management. And I mean, it is a concern if we're going to continue to play close games, which we likely are. I mean, as overt as the not kneeling the ball when you can kneel it and costing your team a game is, which everyone's going to always talk about, right? Like stuff like you cannot burn a timeout. It's 4th down. You're down 7. There's a minute and a half left. You cannot use a timeout there. Like, you just can't. Like, you got to know better. You understand, if you get stuffed, and you don't make the stupid personal foul, which of course we made. They go 3 and out from the goal line. You have your timeouts. You get the ball back at midfield with a minute and a half left, minute 20 left. And he turns that timeout. They're able to run an extra half of that time off. It's just, and it's been pretty regular with kind of mismanaging clock, no urgency when we need to go faster. And to me, that's the part, because I totally agree with what you're saying, Blue. They're recruiting really well. Look, the quarterback room needs to be addressed big time because it's just inadequate across the board. And I'm assuming
there's going to be a lot of good quarterbacks in there from what I can see. But
I'm assuming they're going to attack that hard, right? And I do believe in their ability to go in there and get kids to come play here. They've shown they can do that. But man, if you mismanage games like that, it does cost you. Yeah. And outside of the kneeling, I mean, there are times this year where it's like even at the end of halves where we sat on the ball when we should have been more aggressive. Even in this game, even before that end sequence was where we burned a timeout. The drive before that, look, I know he's been an interception machine. I get it. Tyler Van Dyke was probably your best player in that game. If not him, it's Mark Fletcher. The fact that they would not let him throw on 3rd and medium and they just slammed into the line and kicked a 50-yard field goal to tie the game up. You got to go try to win the game there. By the way, if you go down and score a touchdown, even with Louisville's touchdown, you just need a field goal to tie it at the end. Like, those are the types of things where we tend to – okay, let me ask it this way because obviously I have no idea if Mario's going to, study managing the clock or not. But Do you think the concern, and this will go into, I think, some of what Ralph was talking about coaching wise, do you think some of the conservatism we've seen offensively, because I think we can definitely say that, especially the back half of the season, there's been a little bit of, let's run it and punt, let's play conservative, let's not open up, let's play slower, let's bleed the clock. There's a lot more of that in the second half of the season. Do you think that's because Tyler Van Dyke was struggling so much they were protecting him? Or is this more of a, this is the way we want to play type of thing?
DJ, I'll let you hang.
Go to DJ first. I'll go to DJ first. Blue does not want to step on that landmine and just put in front of him.
I feel like this is how the coaching staff wants to play, to be completely honest with you, because we saw it at times last season as well, even. And I watched a lot of games this weekend and obviously throughout the season, and not just Miami, and you'd be surprised at how many, quality head coaches are terrible in-game clock managers. And I'm not saying that Mario Cristobal is known for that or anything like that, but there's been several times throughout his entire tenure that his clock management and his game awareness or whatever you want to call it just hasn't been there. So I do think it's a little bit of a concern heading into next year. Hopefully he'll correct it somehow and improve it. But, if he hasn't learned it by year 3, then I think what we get is what we get, unfortunately. And I'm not freaking out about it, but I do think it's something to keep in the back of our minds in terms of it being a concern.
And I think before I throw it to Blue, I think to Mr. Ovis's points, I'll use his phrase. This is what's making me go nuts. I'm like, look, I can understand the build. I can understand TBD, how like his, whatever, whether he's injured or not, whatever it was, like the way he was playing really put handcuffs on the offense. Because if you can't even get him to check it down against a 3-man rush, like what play are you going to call that's going to work? So I get all of that. But, the whole thing about we're going to just settle for these long field goals, which we've done repeatedly the last few weeks. And you know what? Borregales missed a couple of them and it cost us. And like, maybe we should have been going for, if you get one touchdown and throw one interception into the end zone, that's actually better than kicking 2 field goals. Might not feel better because you feel like you left points out there, but it's actually better.
But you at least tried.
Well, it's just math. It's 7 points instead of 6.
Yeah.
You'd rather throw it in the end zone twice and have one intercepted than settle for 2 field goals, just on paper. But I think, so I get all of that. But again, I think it is again, stealing Mr. Ovidis' word. What's making me go nuts is like, look, nothing in terms of having to rebuild and having to, get better quarterback play means you need to call a timeout with 12 seconds on the play clock on 4th and goal on the 4, knowing you might need 3 timeouts to get the ball back.
Right.
Like, to me, that's just run the damn play. And by the way, the play they drew up was like the same play they'd run on the previous play. It wasn't even. So it wasn't like, wow, we got this thing in the bag. If we call this timeout and just like walk through it, it's gonna hit. It was the same play again. It was the same throw. So I don't that part is frustrating. I don't think, like, I'm not actually as it was obviously the most painful loss of the year, but I am not at all worried that we're going to get into a situation where he can kneel it and this man will not kneel the ball. I think for the rest of his life, he is going to kneel the ball. Like, I think we're good on that. But this other kind of management, even that whole last drive, you're losing. You cannot run the clock down to 0. Like, was he trying? Right. It looked like we were trying to punch that in with 5 seconds left in the game and get to overtime, which is not exactly. I mean, I know we've won 2 overtime games this year, but there was plenty of time to go down, score, get a stop. I guess he's not trusting the defense in that game, which again maybe is fair, but there's time to go down, get a stop, get the ball back, get your All-American kicker to bomb a winning field goal. Like, there was plenty of time to do that, and I felt like they kind of shuttered in and put a lot on the offense having to score in the red zone, which has not been a strength of this team, and it showed up again. And I don't know. I don't have a good answer on that, but I do. Ralph was also asking about getting more creative and scheme better. I mean, the offense clearly like moved the ball well on Saturday and put up a ton of yards and a ton of points, and it wasn't enough. But I don't know if you have any thoughts on this. Do you think, like, at this stage, because I know, DJ, you're talking about year 3 in Miami. He's obviously head coach at Oregon, successfully, mind you. Like, we forget he won the Pac-12 twice. He finished ranked 5th in the country once there. This is not a guy who has not had success. So, I mean, I think there's little bit of hand-wringing for our fan base, which is understandable based on, some of the heartbreaking ways this team has lost game, but also, like, this is not a man who does not know how to lead a program, not a coach. He's proven he can do that at a high-level conference. The man's won a Rose Bowl. Like, I think this is very different. I know I would say it's just like Randy Shannon and Al Golden. I was like, those guys had no track record of success, and they have none since they left. Right? I mean, this is a paradigm shift in the caliber of coach we brought in. So I think that does warrant more patience and more time because he's proven he can do it somewhere else. But Blue, I don't know. Do coaches, better than I would or DJ would, like, in the offseason, they look at things like this? Like, because I know it's something, look, I'm saying it, I know a lot of our fans are talking about, how's he ever going to get better at managing games if he's like, because he's the head coach. Like, if the head coach is a problem with that, who's going to tell him? Like, is this something that coaches look at? You think it's something that he'll maybe evaluate a little bit?
You make a great point. And as much of a detailed guy as Mario is, you have a long off season. There's a lot of days that people come in, the coaches come in and they're watching film and they're scouting people and they're getting ready for the camps and there's spring. But there's a lot of days that you could pull your defensive coordinator, basically now in this case, your offensive coordinator off and go into the film room for 4, 5, 6 hours, get your lunch served in there and go over scenarios of all these games, especially this year, and what you can do better. And I think that this Louisville game was a prime example, as you mentioned, Vish, that they could go in there and look at every play and every scenario and say, hey, wait a minute, let's back this up. What should we have done, thinking ahead? I mean, obviously, it's easier said than done to say, well, we should have done this and that without any opposition because no one's providing you a counter, from a defensive standpoint or whatever. But that's why you have your defensive coordinator and one of the best defensive coordinators. You play chess against each other. You have to. You got to devote a day or two during the week in the offseason to making sure that your time management, that your play calling, that your scenarios, and I know they do this during the week in practice, but I don't think I think they do it just from preparation for a game on what a coach and a team have tendencies to have done in the past. But you got to remember, football's a chess match. And if you don't make adjustments, you lose. And that's just the way it is. And so to me, I think you have to be, and I don't want to step on anybody's toes, but you got to be better prepared all the way around. And I don't think sometimes Miami goes on in the games, and it's evident on some of the calls that they make. And you know what? Somebody brought to my attention in that Georgia Tech game. You had an offensive coordinator, you had a head coach, and a quarterback who had a lot of experience in on that scenario. And why didn't one of the guys, like your offensive coordinator or your quarterback, go, well, wait a minute, coach, don't you think we should take a knee here? You got to, because Tyler Van Dyke isn't afraid to say something, else. He said it before, he's audibled at the line of scrimmage. To me, I would just take a timeout and say, coach, I don't know if handing off is going to be the right thing to do here. I mean, what if we lose the ball this way? I'm just saying, in scenarios, you have to go over everything. And there's no way a major college or any coach in college or high school should not be that adept to say, hey, wait a minute, we need to just take a knee. Any percentages. There's no percentage in the game of football. And I'm harping on this one situation is because it cost a game. It didn't just, we lost that play. It's cost a game. And that's what I'm saying. You have to be in a situation of being prepared. Could you ever imagine that happen in Alabama? No, that's not going to happen in Alabama. It's
no, but I do think, if it were to happen in Alabama, they'd probably get away with it because the defense wouldn't give up a touchdown like that. And I think what tends to happen is and this is where I say we're a little bit snake bait, and also we make a lot of these micro mistakes that in a vacuum you might see a team make. We make a lot of those that you don't see a team making all of those in the same game. Then you end up losing a close game. It's like if any one of those. I mean, here's a good example. End of the first half. I mean, the roughing the passer call on Ruben Bain was an atrocious call that gave Louisville a touchdown, essentially, because they're about to have to kick that field goal. Instead, they got first and goal on the 4 and were able to score. But the drive before that, I do think, and I do want to get everyone's opinion on Dawson, because apparently everyone wants to fire him, and I don't agree. But anyway, I will, Jeff, friend of the show. But the previous possession, I thought the offense actually managed it well, because there's about 2 and some change left. And what you want to do is get one first down and then open up and try to drive down. And I don't know what Don Chaney was doing when he ran out of bounds 3 yards short of the first down, when he could have easily gotten another 5 or 6 yards. And that killed that drive. That's a player execution issue, because he caught it heading up the field and just veered out of bounds. I'm like, hey, I mean, what do you do there? I know we want to all point at the coaches, and like, it's just a player mistake, and those mistakes happen. We just seen make a lot of those. And that's not a play where you look at it and be like, oh, that's the worst play I've ever seen, or how could you do that? Stuff like that does happen, but we end up paying for it when we make a personal foul that wasn't a personal foul, and they punch it in right at the end of the half, and now you're tied instead of up a touchdown going into the half. You know, it's like we tend to just get paid for like when we do things that should work out, they tend to not. When we, like, the most likely scenario at the end of that Georgia Tech game was they call Chaney down, game is over, and you're like, God, we're a bunch of idiots, but we got away with it. I cannot believe we lost that game, right? I mean, so it's just one of those, it's been one of those years, and I think then it's easier to focus. I do think it would have been hard for TBD in the moment to try to overrule his head coach and offensive coordinator and say, hey, I know the clock better than you guys do. Let's kneel this. The other thing is, Boo, to your point, though, we didn't have to call timeout, because they were there was a timeout after every one of those plays, because they were calling them. So we were going over to the sideline after first down, going over to the sideline after second down, huddling. Thumbs up. And had every opportunity for someone over on the whole sideline to say, hey, especially before the one we fumbled on, even though we didn't fumble, there's less than 40 seconds on the clock right there. You just have to kneel it. So it was.
No, I hear what you're saying.
It was actually worse than you thought. We didn't have to call a timeout to discuss. They were going over on it. They were tight. That Georgia Tech was calling those timeouts. So it was. There was ample time to talk that through. But I'd like to get your thoughts. I mean, again, actually, Guidry today, addressed there's some rumors he might be going to LSU. He talked about that. Say he's happy here or whatever. We'll see how that plays out. But Shannon Dawson has kind of come under the microscope. Certainly not just for his play calling, but I mean, he is the quarterback's coach. And if we talk about what the weakness on this team was, that is his role to coach. And then obviously the prodigal son, Ken Dorsey, was fired last week. So he's sitting there. What are your thoughts, I guess, overall on his coaching? Is he do you think I would be surprised if he's not the offensive coordinator here next year. I'm just going to put that out there. I know, and I do think continuity matters. Second year in a system for a lot of these kids will do them a lot of good. And I think a lot of kind of the what I'm calling micro errors tend to go away when you're more comfortable in your system. So I don't think he should be fired. I'm going to be blunt about that too. But I know a lot of fans want him gone. Blue, I'll start with you. What are your thoughts on kind of the overall job Dawson has done this year?
I agree with you. He'll be back next year. I mean, he's got to be. You just can't just say, okay, 1 year and that's it. Give him a year to get familiar. You remember he wasn't here last year at this time. He was hired. Remember how very late. Yeah, the coordinators were ushered in pretty quick. I think he'll be back again next year. And he'll have a full off season. All of January and February is going to be very important to him. But again, you got to have a quarterback. See, if you knew you had a quarterback coming back or one coming in that's going to come in January, you could just lock the doors and spend all the time with him. He did that with TBD, but it was kind of like 3 weeks before spring. So I think and that's the thing I don't, kind of get upset about is that you didn't leave the season with a defined quarterback coming back. Emory did a nice job, but he's not ready. He showed that in FSU. He showed that in Georgia Tech, or Clemson, rather. But that, to me, is the most important thing, his relationship. So to just throw him out after less than a year is not fair. Let's give him another year. And if we're in this situation next year, there's going to be a lot of people in trouble if we're in the same situation next year. But I think he would be, he'll be moving on. And it's just tough for me to believe how somebody could be so good and all of a sudden forget to be good. So he has to have some instinct somewhere. And yeah, I know I hear all the time, Houston had all this talent. Well, Miami's got talent. You just got to learn to put them in the right places and call the right plays. And I just need to believe that he has to expand his offensive playbook a little bit more and stop running off tackle and doing bubble screens. And you know what? That jet sweep I loved. That misdirection I loved. You got to do those things. Everybody does those things. And it's a shame to have a Burchard Smith and a Ray Joseph and not utilize their blazing speed. And to me, getting those guys into space. Can you imagine if they ran the same routes as Restrepo did? They'd have double the yards because they're faster. They can get away. I'm not taking anything away from Restrepo, but he's a possession kid. At the end of the day, he's a possession receiver and does a pretty good job. And he'll take him. That was kind of not characteristic for him to go, 65, 70 yards or whatever he went, that long play. But I just don't think they're using imagination. And I'm mortified that the tight ends are not involved at all. All we heard about was Arroyo when Will Mallory was, don't worry, Arroyo's going to be the best ever. He's going to be better than Jeremy Shockey. And you know what? We've never given any of these guys a look. And to me, you got a couple of young kids that you brought in last year. That would be my objective, to really get the tight ends involved, because aren't they great valves to have? You look at Louisville's offense, you look at Iowa's offense, you look at programs that utilize a tight end, but still has their receivers and their slots and their running backs. So I think we need to diversify the offense a little bit more. And listen, I know about what it takes in the offseason. I go to a lot of events, and I know how much time you have on your hands. And I know you don't want to run these guys ragged during the offseason and get them in there at 5 o'clock in the morning and make them leave at 12 midnight. But there's going to be a little bit more emphasis. Let the other guys recruit. But your coordinators need to be in that, in there, just going over every scenario possible, maybe expanding the playbook, but they got to get a quarterback right away. We're talking January type stuff.
I think we need
two. I agree, but get one, to start with, and then get your second one. But that's what I would do. And that's what he didn't have time to do last year, is spend that time. So that's all I need. I don't want to get rid of. I think the coaching staff we have now is a good coaching staff.
Yeah, and I think he looked a lot better as a coordinator in this game when all of a sudden TVD could throw like he's shown at times during his career, like that one play where he rolled out and flicked his wrist and threw 40 yards over the safety's head and dropped it onto Restrepo. And it's like, that's why they kept. Everyone's like, why they keep forcing him out there? It's because he could do that. And it makes the offensive coordinator. We loved Dawson a lot better when the quarterback was playing better,
right? No,
and
right.
that makes everything look a lot better. And the offense played well last weekend because the quarterback played a lot better. And all of a sudden, those plays that aren't working, they work when TVD can throw it 40 yards on a rope and drop it onto a dime. All of a sudden, the offense looks good. But yeah, I think we need to. I agree with you, Blue. We need one guy's the guy. We also need a functional backup.
Yeah, I agree with you.
And we don't know what's going on with Jakari Brown's even going to be back. We know Emory Williams is dealing with an injury, supposed to be ready for spring ball, but he needed this bowl practice. He needed all that development time. That's really going to hurt his growth.
Yep. Yeah.
Even if he's healthy for spring. Judd Anderson's a project. You cannot just have TVD leave, which I think we all agree is going to hit the portal.
Yeah.
And then just replace him with a portal quarterback and be like, we're good. It's the same quarterback room then. What if that guy gets injured? Because until North Carolina injured TVD, and the fact that it caused him to kind of mentally lose it. because that was more mental than physical. What we were seeing when he was struggling those games is reason number one why he can't be the quarterback here anymore after this year, right? I mean, that's for sure. But like we're just a play away from being in that same position again next year. Even if you get a stud, you could get the second coming of Michael Penix, and if he gets injured in the first game, you're in the same boat you are again. So there needs to be, because again, we have not built. That's the one position we just have not built the depth in, and we've not stacked the classes, and it shows up on the. So that's definitely, and that'll be a big, responsibility for Dawson to go get not just look. There's gonna, as Blue said, as DJ said earlier, a lot of these guys are gonna enter the portal. We should be able to land a bang on. This guy could be a starter.
We have to do it quickly. We have to do it quickly because there's also a lot of other teams looking for a quarterback, and
right,
there. And I'm not just and there when it comes to off-season hires, especially last year and stuff. There was no sense of urgency or anything like that, and I'd love to see a little more urgency when it comes to, identifying and landing talent because we can't afford to wait. And I think ultimately, the quicker we land a quarterback, the quicker it'll help Dawson. So I'm not really ready to write Dawson off yet either. I would give him at least another year.
Right, but it is on him. Like he's the quarterback's coach. He's got to go get one of these guys out of the portal. We'll see who enters. That that's the top, let's say 15 quarterback in the country.
Right.
One.
Right. Needs to do that. And then number two, he needs to unearth someone that we could potentially, that could start. Potentially that's willing to, you're probably going to, you always tell him, we'll let you compete, but he's going to pretty much know I'm going to lose this job to the other guy. And he's willing to come in here and be the backup. Maybe he's got a little bit more eligibility left. He thinks he can start down the road, whatever. Because you need two guys. And Dawson needs to go find them. He needs to use his recruiting connections, whatever he's got in there. And we need more than one. And frankly, if Jakari Brown transfers, which is not off the table for sure, given that he has not taken a snap this year, and TVD hits the portal, which I think he's going to do on Saturday, I would if I were him.
A rough room.
Well, we might be direct snapping to Burchard in the bowl game because we don't have another quarterback. So I'm assuming we'll play a walk-on, but that's how bad the room is. So it needs to be treated, Blue, to your point. That's your emergency.
Yep.
You've got to fix that room, and that has to start on Saturday.
Yep. No time.
You got to go fix that room on Saturday. You got to start doing that. Because that whole room, we've been saying a lot of TBD this, TBD that. TBD is definitely fourth-year junior, should be a lot better than he played this year. Also, he shouldn't be the only option. And I think there's two problems there, and we got to address the depth. Last question I want to ask on this, I'm going to do some prize picks. I want to talk a little bit about BC before we get out of here. So Ralph mentions Dino Babers, a little closer to home, maybe Ken Dorsey. Would you be interested in bringing in one of these kind of more experienced offensive coaches as an analyst, or do you think that'll kind of step on Dawson's ability to kind of run the what are your thoughts on that? Because that's what the Alabamas of the world do it, but they do it with more experienced coaches. So when you have Bill O'Brien, who's been an NFL head coach, he's not going to look over his shoulder because there's an analyst that used to be a head coach. It's a little bit different with someone like Shannon Dawson. I don't know what either of you, if you all want to give an opinion on the thoughts of bringing maybe an offensive analyst with a lot more experience than maybe our offensive coordinator.
I don't think they'll do that.
I don't.
Yeah.
That would be stepping on toes, in my opinion. And quite honestly, we had a situation sort of similar to that last year, and it didn't work out well at all. So I don't think I would go down that route again. I mean, he would be a good get, but I don't see it happening.
It's an excellent point, DJ. We did have too many Chiefs, not enough Indians last year.
Yeah,
and it feels like almost recreating that in a way by putting some.
We don't want to do that again.
It depends on how engaged the analyst is, right? If it's someone that's just kind of, there's been some of these analysts don't even go to the school that they just do it remotely. They get on.
That's why some of these programs can have so many analysts,
right? But something like that, I think I'm okay with it. Not if they're going to be in the room at the athletic center, looking over Dawson's shoulder and telling him what he's doing wrong. That I don't. That I don't want, because again, if you don't trust Dawson to run this offense, get him out of here. But
Right.
I think Mario does, and I think it's important that we have that continuity, just like we've had continuity with our sponsor for the last year or two, PricePicks.com. So PricePicks.com is your daily fantasy. It's pretty simple. You bet you pick 2 to 5 players. You bet the over under on their lines. You'll get stuff like quarterbacks yardage thrown or number of touchdowns or interceptions. Running backs outside of football. Basketball points scored, rebounds, whatever the stat. You'll get that, and then you bet over under 2 to 5 players. You pick. If you hit them all, you get paid out. The more you add to your bet, the more you would potentially win. It's up to 25 times the amount you put in there. And if you open a new account now and your first deposit, you use the offer code 5. That is FIVE, the word 5 spelled out. PricePicks.com and 5 Reasons Sports will match your first deposit up to $100. So that is PricePicks.com. Offer code 5. That is the word 5 spelled out, FIVE. All right, so there is still one game left to play. I know we kind of just did a big season retrospective, but that is up in DJ's neck of the woods, man. The Canes are coming to town, DJ. They have decided to grace Boston because of the way they've now done a new scheduling model after last year's new scheduling model. They will not be back, I want to say, for 10 years or something like that. It's going to be a while before they. So DJ, what do the Canes have to expect in Boston? What is that atmosphere like at the? I think it's Alumni Stadium is what's called in Chestnut Hill, and then what's I think every Miami fan's thinking the same thing. What is the weather?
It's going to be, I think it's going to be pretty cold, so I wouldn't count on a good forecast. I mean, quite honestly, there are loyal Boston College fans just talking about the atmosphere, but this is a pro sports city. As far as the actual team goes out on the field, they do have a very good quarterback in Thomas Castellanos. BC struggled early in the season, but once Castellanos found his groove, he was able to really kind of put them back in bowl contention, and to be quite honest with you, probably save Jeff Hafley's job for at least another season. So, right now Boston College, they're at the 6-win mark. They are going to a bowl game, much like Miami, but I mean, in terms of weapons on this Boston College team, Castellanos can also run with the football, so he's more of a dual threat quarterback. They aren't an explosive offensive team by any means. I mean, you look at some of the games. They beat Syracuse 17-10. They lost to Pittsburgh, 24-16. So this is a very kind of up and down team, and you're not sure which one is going to come on any given Saturday. I mean, you heard me mention it earlier in the show. They just barely, beat Holy Cross, a school about 10 minutes from where I went to college, a low Division I school, and then they went toe-to-toe with Florida State. But at the same time, they did make it to a bowl. I don't think Miami should have any trouble with them. Of course, we've said that a bunch of times this season, but at the same time, there's nothing here that Miami can't stop. I mean, as long as you can contain Castellanos' legs, and as long as you can get a little pressure in his face, you should be able to stop Boston College offensively. I mean, their leading receiver has 565 yards. I guess if you're looking at the defensive side of things, their defensive back, Elijah Jones, has 5 interceptions. So that might be something to watch for if you're, the quarterback for Miami. But
how they do against a Wildcat?
I think they played actually one Wildcat team this year where they used a couple Wildcat formations, and it did not go well. So I mean,
I still haven't gotten over DJ saying that Miami shouldn't have trouble with any team now.
I know, but it's Boston.
They're 6-5. They're the same record as Miami, and I know they have had the
almost
easier.
lost to Holy Cross.
I know
Who cares? Miami
Cross
lost to Middle
is-
Tennessee State last year. So
yeah,
I mean,
Holy Cross is like low Division 1. Middle Tennessee State is like,
all I'll say is I expect it to be
good game.
a close game. Like, I mean, all of our games are.
No doubt.
I mean, I don't know. If there was a game for Miami to win running away, I could see this
They already
Boston
did
College
that.
game.
Bethune was gone. And
But not lately though. Not lately. Not lately. But if there was
But I
one
will
to
tell
win,
you this.
Good.
I think that they have a good crowd because Miami always draws well Northeast people.
they have a Miami chapter up here in the Northeast.
Yeah, I
actually,
know.
Yeah.
It's pretty strong up there. I'm like Vish. That thing is going to come down to the wire. It's coming down to the wire. And fans in South Florida, if it's not close enough, they're going to turn it off and watch the Dolphins and the Jets, which kicks off at 3. So it's about the right time.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah, first time ever they play in a Friday night NFL game after Thanksgiving. But listen, just wanting to go out there, play as well as they can, and you know, whatever happens, happens, and then get ready for the bowl game and then move on. You know, it's frustrating, but I don't, you know, we've beat this horse many times, and it's not going to change until it changes. So, but
and Blue, to your point, like, look, there's some seniors playing their last game. You want them to go out with a win. This is not. Let's just be real. This game is not going to change the trajectory of the Miami program. 7-5 versus 6-6 is not gonna do anything, and nothing. You know, either we're, and I said this, and people were screaming at me on Twitter, but like, when you're rebuilding, there is not anything outwardly apparent that is different between this is going to eventually work and it's not. You can look at those teams in the late 90s. They certainly did not look like they were about to be the best team in college football history.
right.
Blewett, I can't imagine. This was the year before the BCS computers screwed the Canes out of the title game and they finished second because Florida State went and lost to Oklahoma. The year before that, Miami was up 23-3 at East Carolina. And the reason I'm putting "at" in quotes is a tropical storm hit East Carolina's field. They couldn't play there. They moved it to a neutral site in Raleigh. The Canes blew a 20-point lead in the second half and lost. And I can't imagine at that point anyone's like, you know, next year at this time, best team in the country.
Yeah. Well,
and it was, right? And inside the program, you could see, man, Ed Reed made a mistake on that play. That guy is great. Give it a year. Like, inside, they can see that. We don't see that outside, right? And so I think Blue has a little bit more of the inside than we do. That's why he's more confident probably than some of us are, because he's seeing a little bit more of how the sausage is made than we are. But, like, outwardly, that team looked no different than our 2009 team that, you know, won at Florida State, lost at Virginia Tech, but beat Oklahoma, beat Clemson. And you're like, this team actually lost to Clemson in overtime, but won some games. You're like, this team is getting there. And the bottom fell out. The coach was fired the next year. Yeah. The other one, you're winning the Sugar Bowl, finishing second, and got screwed out of the championship. And the year before looked very similar. And so I think everyone, I'm not saying we're right or wrong. I'm saying, like, looking at this thing and saying, well, if that happens, that means we're definitely going to fail. You don't know. And if there was a way to do it correctly, everyone would just do it. There isn't. And so I know people don't want to hear patience, but Mario is not responsible for the last 20 years of failure at the school. He's not. He's for the last 2 years, and certainly last year was an abomination, and he owns that. And he made a lot of mistakes, which is why a lot of the coaches went. And he acknowledged that was him making those changes. But, you know, we'll see where we are a year or two from now. But as Blue's point, like, we're talking about, you know, what does it mean for Dawson if we're having this conversation next year? We're having this conversation next year. You know, it
means a lot for everybody.
The focus is not going to be on the offensive coordinator anymore. If we're sitting here at 6-5 going into the last game next year, no, it's not going to be the offensive coordinator we're talking about. Because I don't think anyone in their right minds thinks this should be a 6-win team next year. So I get it. It's frustrating. You want to win these games, and we're in all of them too. So it's kind of, you know, it's the hope that kills you.
And the great thing too is you look back at the A&M and Florida State games, which were national televised games, and Miami was being praised and hyped for they're on their way back and look at they're doing right and this and that. So, if everybody nationally could see it and you were on display, it's there. It's there. It'll come. It's just, and I don't care how many times I have to belabor the point, but the roster that Mario took over was as bad a roster as you're going to get. And that's why he made 43 changes last year. He'll make more this year. And hopefully they'll, as Vish said, get a couple of quarterbacks in here, have a good little direction. You have a running game that's going to be really good. You got some receivers. You got an offensive line that's starting to build pretty good. Defensively, there's a lot of young pieces. So I think there's a lot to be optimistic about. And by just focusing in on this year and trying to get rid of people, you're never going to find out truly if you keep getting rid of people before they have an opportunity to kind of showcase what they do. And the only thing is you look back and Norville's first year, he won 3. Second year, he won 5. This year, he's in the national championship hunt. So 3 years, I think, is a fair assessment to get things back in order. And I think that this offseason, you'll see they'll strike gold. There's a lot of reasons to come here. I don't know if they're going to flip a lot of kids, but if they do, power to them. Look at their recruiting class already for 2024. It's really good. They've made some really good decisions. And all you need right now, you got some really good, tremendous running backs coming in. And then remember, you still have Citizen, who a lot of people have told me that he may be his best back on that roster. So, you pick up a couple of people, little like DJ, you said, little disgruntled people going into the portal. There's always a reason someone leaves. Sometimes it's performance, but then you get a Sam Hartman type of guy who left because he wanted to win. And, Wake Forest was winning, but they were only getting to a certain point. But then you get other quarterbacks who, like my dad once told me, if you buy somebody else's used car, you buy their headache. So there's been a reason why people get rid of things. And I'm not one of those change of environment type of guys. Either you got it or you don't. You could run a 4.3, you could beat the guy who runs a 4.7. And that's, but I think I'm very optimistic no matter what happens. I would just like to see them win on Saturday for a number of reasons. They clinch a winning season, and you don't want to end up 6-7 because that just gives people more fodder. And, if you're 7-6 or whatever, that's different. But if you're 6-7, that just continues to have people come on here and write and say how everybody should be gone. And so I don't care what happens the rest of the season. I just think, and as you said, Vish, if we're having this conversation next year, a lot of people are in trouble.
Yeah, and to your point, Blue, not only would that be a 6-7, it would be ending the year on a 5-game losing streak. So that's not how you want to, go into tackle this off season and into spring ball, because it's NC State, Florida State, Louisville, or Wasp.
Yeah,
so
sure.
If you lose BC in the bowl game, you are sitting there on a 5-game losing streak, which is obviously not the way you want to end the season. Just to answer Kane's Day's question, yeah, we'd have lost more games than Louisville. Louisville's a better team than us. We probably would have beat Pitt, though. Lost to some of the better teams Louisville did beat. But they came into our own building and beat us. So why wouldn't we? Don't really understand the context here, because I expect us to do worse against Louisville's schedule than Louisville did, because Louisville's better than us.
Louisville's a pretty good football team.
Yeah.
What else did you need to see? They walked into our own stadium and beat us a couple of days ago. I don't know what else you need to do to show they're better than us.
See, they execute well in their discipline,
Yeah.
and that's, they play for Brom. Brom's a good coach, and
He is.
I think that's the difference, is that they don't make mistakes and they don't hurt themselves like Miami does. Miami always wants to be handing people games for some reason. Sure.
A lot that's part of the team. So the coaches, the whole staff, everyone in the athletic department is part of that team. They all play a role in this.
Yeah.
So the people that the off-field analysts play a role, all of it plays a role. So yeah, if the coaches are struggling, that's the team. That's part of the team. I think there's a very good chance FSU wins at Louisville wins the game, especially with
now
George
that's
Travis.
a stretch since the quarterback is out. So,
yeah.
Yeah,
and then I think the QB this is job one in the off season is to address the QB room, but I think this
immediately.
It's going to be on Dawson, right? To get someone in here who he has to know this is the right guy to run my offense, to turn what's been a weakness this year into a strength next year.
Yeah.
But then he also needs to he's been at Houston, he's been in some of these lower conferences. Go find someone out there to be the backup. Like, hey, you're not going to start year one. You got a couple of years eligibility left. You can be on an ACC team right now. You can come back up whoever he gets that hopefully has a little bit better pedigree under his belt right now and say, hey, you can come in, you can back him up. If there's an injury, you're going to get to be the starting quarterback at Miami and find that guy. And I think that's something that he's the quarterback's coach. He's the offensive coordinator. Go find the right guys to run your offense. So, frankly, if the quarterbacks are struggling next year, that's on Dawson.
100%.
It's his offense. He's the quarterback coach. Get guys that you know will work. You don't have to get the best quarterback in the world. You get the best quarterback to run your team.
Exactly. And I think that's a point that a lot of people miss. Like they want all these big names, but some of these names just don't fit into the system that these coaches want to run. It's like having all these 5-star kids, but not, knowing how to utilize them properly. And I'm not speaking about Miami. That was just a generalization overall, because I've seen so many teams, they get all the talent in the world, but they don't put their players in positions to succeed. And then that does nobody any good.
So I don't know that we necessarily changed the game. I mean, it got more conservative. I think it got more conservative because the quarterback play got worse. Like the game play against Georgia Tech was not conservative. We kept throwing interceptions. We should have run the ball more in that game, actually. And I think it was the quarterback play. And also, my weekly reminder for people to go revisit the North Carolina game, because I think you'll find the offense carried the team in that game, and it went a lot differently than he thought it did. But anyway. All right, so like Blue said, it's the last week. Let's hope we get a win here.
22-16 Miami.
All right, there we go. Man, read my mind. I was about to ask for predictions and get us out of here. So Blues got 22-16 Miami. DJ, the floor is yours. Also, the question was asked earlier. I hope
DJ hates Boston College so much. He's just going to pick against.
Well, this was the question. Well, the question was asked earlier. I'll go find it. But who is DJ rooting for? I was like, Miami. What are we talking about? But,
definitely Miami.
Yeah, definitely. Nebraska's not playing, so definitely Miami.
They are actually against Iowa. A big rivalry game on Friday.
Yeah, I can see
at
that.
Noon. At noon.
Cover their tight ends. They throw their tight ends.
Yeah, they do have a lot of tight ends.
What do you got on Saturday here?
28-13 Miami. And I think, honestly, Miami could score 30+, but I'll give Boston College a little bit of credit and say 28-13 Miami.
And he scored 30 plus this week. So, if we get this, I'll kind of split the difference and have it 24-14. So a little bit in the middle there.
I just want everybody to get out of there healthy.
I mean, whoever's left, we've
been
rolling mash unit this year. But
that's my point. No more mash unit. No more injuries for now. Just everybody get out of there healthy. You have your bowl game, and a win would be nice.
Yeah, and so hopefully we get the good version of TBD. Anyway, that game is it's Friday at noon, and then the women's basketball team hosts a game at 4 p.m. at home on campus, if anyone's in the area.
Then tomorrow night, men are at Kentucky, huh?
No, that's next week.
Oh, next week. Okay.
Yeah, I hope so, because I bought tickets and I'm flying next week.
Well,
so hopefully it's not this week. If it's tomorrow, I gotta call a travel agent or something.
That's next week. Okay.
That's next week. Yeah, but
they're off until next week.
Yeah, they're off for 9 days.
Wow.
It's kind of weird gap in the schedule there. The women do host a postseason at Thanksgiving tournament every year. So that's Friday and Sunday. If anyone's heading out to the arena, $5 tickets. I'll be out there this weekend with Melissa too on Sunday. So
$5, that's not bad.
It's a best deal in town. It's general admission too, just so you can go sit right in the middle of the court. So
good stuff. Who do they play?
It's a tournament, so I want to say the first game. I'm gonna have to look now.
Not TCU. Get to see my girl Cavender. If that
Well, she's not on the team yet, man. She's got to sit
I
here.
know.
They're gonna play Colgate on Friday, and then Mississippi
ETS
State next Wednesday.
No, that's next week. But so they play Colgate on Friday, and then they play it's a tournament. So if they win, they'll play Eastern Tennessee State or Norfolk State. If they lose, they'll play one of those teams, either the winner or the loser.
What time is Sunday's game?
1:30.
Okay. Maybe I'll see if I can get out there.
Nice. Yeah, Melissa and I will be there at the Sunday game. And then, as DJ said, next week, it's the ACC SEC Challenge next week. So they're at Starkville.
That should be a good game next week.
Well, have a good Thanksgiving, guys.
Yes,
Enjoy.
happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Happy Thanksgiving, guys.
Just real quick plug. We do have buckets tomorrow at 7, so we'll be talking more about that hoops. But yeah, happy Thanksgiving, Blue, DJ. It's been a pleasure all year. I know we have one game left, but it is actually the next time
we have 2 games left.
Well, one regular season game left. So next time we talk, the regular season will be over. So yeah, it's been a pleasure. Happy Thanksgiving to you and your family, and
you
to
too.
Jazz out there. Happy Thanksgiving to you as well. And everyone else will be back next. Well, happy Thanksgiving to everyone else in the chat too, all our commenters, even the ones I called a dumbass a couple of weeks ago. We still love all of you. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone. We'll be back next week, same time, same place. Hopefully, talking about a winning season versus a 500 season. Go Canes!
Go Canes!
The 6 Rig Kane Show. Yeah. The 6 Rig Kane Show. Yeah. The 6 Rings Kane Show. You know.